Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. The topic of this 10-minute moan is uncovering an absolute lie often told by the SNP. Another one. This one is the myth that the SNP done away with tuition fees in Scotland, which takes some doing because it actually happened in the first ever Scottish Parliament, and they didn't actually take control until the third Scottish Parliament. And there's a bit of a story here, so that they're trying to grab little bits of truth and fact and paint a whole different picture. So let me explain this sordid story to you. The first Scottish Parliament didn't see any majority. In fact, if you just give me 1 second, I'll tell you how the results went. Scottish Labour had 56 seats, just shy of the majority. Scottish Nats 35, Tories 18, and the Liberal Democrats 17. So Labour being the biggest party, are hardly going to do a deal with the Nats. They're never going to do a deal with the Tories. So they've done a deal with the Scottish Liberal Democrats to give them a majority in a coalition government. One of the biggest things Labour put to the table when they were looking to negotiate was the abolition of student tuition fees. And that is what made the coalition. Labour agreed to do it, and they became the coalition government in Parliament. So that's kind of what happened. And then the Lib Dems pushed through this thing. Obviously Labour were going to vote for it. They had the majority because between them they had well over the majority of the 65 required to get a majority at the time. And the bill passed. But at the same time, they had a thing called endowment, which meant at the end of your, if you concluded your fees, if you concluded, your studies, you then paid a small endowment back to the university that educated you, but only once you'd reached £25,000. Now, £25,000 24 years ago, quite a chunk of change, right? So, and it was a very small amount of money. It was like a couple of grand. So in comparison to the fees that later were charged for studying, it was small change. And it also done away with the reason for doing away with fees was so that people, low incomes, with their parents couldn't maybe support them to go through their education, could go through their education. Once they'd finished it, if they got a half-decent job, they could pay a wee tickle back to the universities. That kind of made sense. And then, fast forward to 2007, when, let me just get the date, Alex Salmond became a minority government in May 2007. And at that point, people had been talking about looking at this endowment. And there was a bill created in 2008 to do away with not the tuition fees, because they'd gone. I hadn't paid them for 8 years at this point. But the bit at the end. So yeah, there was bursaries available at the time, so that anybody who couldn't afford to would never have paid it, and you only kicked in once you get to a certain earnings anyway, and it was a fraction of the old tuitions. And there was a lot of debate about it at the time, where people from either side of the Parliament were arguing that it would affect the quality of education going forward if nobody was paying anything. And what the argument against it was, well, one, it's not a lot of money. Two, there's a bursary available for those who genuinely can't afford it. And three, we're only charging people once they had a threshold of earnings anyway, that they probably would only have achieved through the education that they got for nothing. And a lot of people looking at it purely from a point of economics suggested that if we done away with it, it would restrict the amount of Scottish kids going to universities. And guess what happened? Exactly that. Because now the government, Scottish government, pay obviously the universities, but they pay them a fraction of what we were charging and what they are charging down south. And because of that, you have to put a cap on it. So they reckon now about 80% of the kids that want to go to university can't go to university, and it's nothing to do with finances. It's down to purely places. because the Scottish Government don't have an infinite amount of cash just to throw. So you're qualified, you can go, right? That's not the way it works. And it's actually becoming almost a postcode lottery because the Scottish Government have got to drive an attainment gap, and that means the gap between those who are in what they determine as poor postcodes and good postcodes. So they want the people in the poor postcodes to get their grades up and go to university. So guess who gets most of the places? So now we've got kids in decent places, with probably their parents could pay for their education, cannot go to Scottish universities. And the whole thing is an absolute shambles. If you go near any of our main universities, you will find a massive increase in student accommodation. For the simple fact that the majority of our students come from probably Asia. Any of our major universities, towns and areas have got massive influx of Oriental students because they pay the full amount. And it gets me to wonder, who benefits from this? Well, it's not the Scottish kids, because even before the abolition of fees back in 2001, when that happened, there was a bursary programme in place. So if you could not afford the fees, then you got free anyway. So it's the same as the prescriptions. You always had free education if, you filled the criteria. You always got free prescriptions as long as you filled the criteria. And all the SNP have done in both of those is extend it so everybody gets them free, but unlike the prescriptions where there's an unlimited amount of them, with the places at further education, there's a limit and a cap put on it. So it's not made anything better for anybody bar, and here's the kicker, the people that build the accommodation to fill our universities with foreign students. They're loving this. They wouldn't want it to go away. And it always makes me, and these are the things that would never have crossed my mind until maybe last year. When you know the only people who are gaining out of this, because universities ain't, Scottish kids ain't, the only people that are actually gaining out of this are the people that build the accommodation for all the foreign ones coming in, because there's more foreign kids at our universities now than there ever was. Because the universities need to charge them full fees. And I wonder if there's any connection between people making the decisions and the people making profit, building these flats. But there's a chat for another day. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe and notification button. Get involved, comments below. They're always good fun. But most importantly of all, unless you're any of the SNP that tell lies about tuition fees or any other cult that buy it all. Not you, but
everyone else. Have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.